Okay, so today we're talking more about the different memory types that we're going to see, and we're going to do some scans with our laptop to show you how to find out what kind of memory you need in your PC. And we're going to talk about how to buy memory, and we're going to read another article and take another little short quiz to try to make sure that we push Brandy back down to the 9.5. Okay, so we've got different kinds of memory. The first kind that really is in use today is everything is SD-RAM. The original kind of SD-RAM was called SD-RAM. After that, we started calling it something else. Even though it's still SD-RAM, we started calling it DDR, and then we called it DDR2, and then we called it DDR3. Or they're kind of DDR3, but they're really all SD-RAM. Okay, and I showed you yesterday that the original SD-RAM had two little notches. And then all the DDRs on the bottom only have one notch, but the notch moved a little bit, and we talked about that in class. So we've got really 3 or 4 different kinds of memory, mainly DDR in use today, okay? But there's also something called error checking RAM. If you accidentally put the wrong kind, you can buy DDR3 because your computer takes DDR3, but if it doesn't take error checking, and it's supposed to, or vice versa, it won't work. Okay. So we need to make sure that we get the right kind. Okay. So we need to know whether it has error checking code in it or not. Okay. And there are different kinds of error checking. But the question is whether it has error checking or not. Okay. One of the kinds of error checking, basically what it does is we got 8 bits in a byte. Let me show you 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, one kind of error checking actually adds a 9th bit, and what it does is it adds together the other one. So like if this is a packet of data, and data is all made of 0 ones, okay? So here we'll make this a packet of data. What it does is it goes and sees whether this is odd or even, and it goes to make it even. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if this is 5, then this turns this into a 1, and that's how it checks. Because this has to be, there's one way of doing it, even, okay? So if this was a 1 over here, this would be a 0 over here, because that's what it takes to make it even. It adds, it's more expensive because it's got extra memory in the memory that you can't use while it's doing the error checking. And that's one of the reasons it's also slower, because every single time it writes, it has to go through here and total this up and figure out what this last bit should be to check for errors. Okay? So the use of the parity bit means that every byte actually uses 9 bits instead of 8s. There's 1/9 more memory in the memory than you actually know is there. Which is why server memory is more costly, because it does both things. It adds more memory to it, and it has to check the parity bit every single time it writes and reads from that, okay? It checks the integrity of the data every single time it reads and writes. So it's a good thing for a server. Make sure it doesn't actually make a mistake, okay? But it's more expensive, and it slows it down slightly. So that's what error checking is, and most machines don't use it.
Like, what kind of error could it do?
Well, it just lost a bit, and one thing went off. Okay? So that's what error checking is. Okay. So it will know that the memory was bad, and it will rewrite it before it uses it. So it won't like it basically, you know, if I'm Brandy, okay, I know I'm oversimplifying things, okay, and you knew that that answer was wrong. Before she went to read it to answer her test, she would say, Brandy, check that again, and then Brandy checked it again, and then she'd fix it, and then she'd use it for a test. How's that for a really simplified answer? Okay, it just says recheck that, gets the data again, and then it uses it. Okay, so that's what error checking is. Most memory is non-ECC. Okay. But you need to make sure you got the right kind. Okay, it's an easy mistake to make because you don't look there very often. Okay, so then we have other terms when it comes to memory. You're going to read an article about it today. But we have column and row access times or latency, and I said latency, think of that equals wait. It's how long it takes or what the delay is between reading and writing to the memory. Okay? It's the number of clock cycles it takes to write or read a column or a row of data. Okay? So a high number is bad or worse. Okay? So low is good when it comes to latency. Low is good.
It's like golf.
Okay? Yeah, it's like golf. Okay, low is good. Now, you have to compare apples to apples. When I look at the latency of memory, if there's tons more memory in there, the fact that it has tons more memory may make it read and write a little bit slower. So when I compare, I've got to compare the same amount of gigabytes, the same speed, and then I look at the latency and say which one's better. Okay? It's the last thing I look at when I'm comparing RAM. It's the last thing. Okay? So when we look at memory, the first thing we look at is its overall speed in megahertz, its clock speed. So if it says it's 800 megahertz, that's the first thing we look at, and we know that syncs to the bus speed. So the higher is better. We want a really fast one if we can to make our computer run the best. And then we want as much as possible memory in our PC within reason. I'm going to show you an article, and you're going to look at it on how much memory is best. Then we want to make sure we use the right technology. Is it ECC? Is it not ECC? Okay, and normally, like I said, I don't think any of your motherboards will probably take ECC, but you have to look at that when we come to that. Then we want to look at that rating next. Okay, and that is lower is better. Okay. Oh, you know what? This technology is not referring to that. This is referring to what from our reading yesterday? What made our memory fast to help get rid of the motherboard bottlenecking with memory? Dual channel. That's what actually this would be. Okay, that's what technology this is talking about. Okay. Dual channel RAM. Some people got that wrong. You need to redo yours. Okay. Reread it. Dual channel is about talking to the memory different so that it goes faster to get it more synced up with the CPU. Okay? To use dual channel, how many sticks do I have to have?
Two.
Two. Okay? And they have to be the same for it to work. Okay? But dual channel memory is supposed to help alleviate that bottleneck and make it run faster. And most motherboards, if you put the memory in wrong, if I put the memory in 1 and 2 here, instead of 1 and 3, because 1 and 3 are paired, it will tell me as soon as I boot up, your memory is not configured in the best way to optimize the speed of this motherboard, or something like that. Okay? Hit F1 to continue, and most people just go F1. Just continue, but it's trying to tell you move your memory so that it runs faster. What did I just do? Make the same slide twice in a row to confuse me. Okay, so here's a little chart that says what's the fastest, okay? So this would be your fastest PC and this would be your slowest. You want more total RAM, you want the best technology, which is DDR. You know, this is kind of funny because if you had FPM or EDO, you're the last thing you're worried about is this computer. Okay, because it's not even a Pentium 1. Okay, I mean, it's especially the fast-paced memory. That's really, really slow. So really, we're looking at all DDR. And then you're going to look at the nanoseconds in speed, and that's how fast the thing runs. But usually, when I'm looking at these, go together. So you usually don't have to look at this and this. Either the speed is fast or the low nanoseconds on the rated speed time. But it's one more thing you can look at. The rated speed here, these two definitely go together. So that's kind of silly that this is even a column to me. But then, does it have ECC or does it not have ECC? ECC is slower than non-ECC. And the last thing down here is the latency. Lower is better. It's kind of how we're going to compare. So when you go to do your motherboard or your memory project, you want to kind of take these things into account. Specifically, you know, it's going to assign how much memory. You need to make sure you get the fastest one you can. You need to get the right error checking, and then lastly, you try to get the lowest latency when we're looking to buy our stuff. Okay, so I want to show you this. There are websites out there that can tell you exactly what kind of memory you need. Okay, and I've got one linked, and it's not this one, to our class site. Where you're going to read this article today, and then you're going to take this quiz, and I've got a couple of videos, and there's an article here on how much RAM to have. But down here is this MemoryX scanner. Okay, and what the MemoryX scanner does, it's an online tool that I can click on, and it will allow you to scan your PC, and it tells you some great stuff about your PC. Okay, so it's an easy way to do it at home, and I'll tell you what, it runs better on Internet Explorer. It's one of those uses IE things, so I'm going to open it up in Internet Explorer instead. See if I can beat Pandora. Nope. There we go. Okay. So right here it says scan your system, so I'm going to click scan my system. You guys can do this on the laptops here in a little bit. Now, you know what, I haven't tried it on this PC, so I don't know how well it does. Okay, and it's a little pop-up there. Hey, you got to do this add-on, so I have to click install add-ons. And then it says, do you want to install it? Yes, I just told you that. And then it's going to ask me if I want to run it, I think. It's basically adding something to our PC to do the scan. It goes and detects what kind of computer you have. And then if your motherboard is on its list really well, it's going to tell you a bunch more than this does right here. Okay? Mine isn't. But what it does tell me is the most important thing is the motherboard model right here. So without breaking out my PC, I know what motherboard I have. So if nothing else, I can go and see there. Now, here's what it tells me, okay? It tells me what kind of CPU, what kind of memory. I have two gigs and 2 empty slots in this PC. So I know I have 2 spots empty that I could put in memory, which is good because I would rather not, you know, like those right there that we're doing in the middle school lab. They only have 2 spots in them. You only have 2 spots, and I'm trying to get it up to a gig, and all I got is 256s. Can I get it up to a gig? Okay. All I've got is 256s left. These are all 256 meg, and I want to get a gig in those computers. Can I do it? No. All I can get is 512, which is what it already has in it. Okay. So the fact that there's only 2 slots is bad, and I've got one open, but that doesn't help me. So in my PC, I've got 2 empty slots, but it doesn't usually down here. It will say it takes this kind of memory, but sometimes it doesn't tell me. And if it doesn't tell me, then I can do the easy thing. I can just take this motherboard model, because that's who makes mine. That's that one, not mine. I made mine. Mine's a homemade. I'm not scanning that one. I'm scanning that one over there at my desk. Okay, so I can go straight to the motherboard manufacturer just by tossing it in Google, which is BioStar, and I can look at what kind of memory this motherboard takes. So here's my motherboard right here. I can go down the specifications, and then I can go down to memory. Okay, so my motherboard supports dual channel. It's a DDR2 motherboard. This is not brand new. Okay, it goes anywhere between 533 and 1066. Okay, but 1066 is only supported by AM2 Plus and AM3 CPUs. So I would have to know what kind of CPU I have to know whether it supports it or not. So I'm safe at DDR2 800, and maybe I can use DDR2 1066. Okay, now, like I said, usually this page will tell me all that right down here. And it usually tells me how much they'll sell it to me for. Which is why this page is really nice. If you're at home, I don't have to bust open my case. If somebody calls you and says, hey, my computer's really slow and I need you to get new memory, what kind should I get? You can just say, hey, go to MemoryX.com and run the scan, and it tells them really everything they need to know. And the prices here are good. I won't say they're the best, but they're usually within $5 of what I can find somewhere else. So if you're only getting 1 stick, it's safe to just buy it here. If you're buying it for the school and you're going to buy 100 sticks, I have never bought it here, because I can always get it cheaper someplace else, and 100 times 5 is enough. I'm not going to buy it there. But, so even if it doesn't come up with that information, we're going to get our laptops, and you're going to do it on your laptops here in a second. You at least get the motherboard make and model, and as soon as I go, like, just like I did, all I did was Google it there. I can go here, and I can get all the information I need. Now, this has 4 slots, and it even tells me supports up to 16 gig of memory, so how much does each slot take? 4, okay? So when I go to buy it, even though it says supports 16, that doesn't mean I can put 2 8s in. When you do that, you have to do the math. You have to divide this by that, because when it says it takes 16, it doesn't mean it'll take 2 8s. It means if you fill all these up to get to that, the most in each individual spot will take, in this case, is 4. Okay. So if I wanted to increase the memory on my PC right now, if it says I've got, how much do we say my PC had? Because that doesn't say on there, does it? Where's my memory? Okay. So my PC right now has 4 gig of RAM. Okay. So I've got a 2 and a 2. Oh, it does say right there. Okay, so I got a 2 gig and a 2 gig. I could put in what? I would do as much as I could. I could put 2 more 4s in there, so I would have a total of
6.
4422 equals
12.
12. Okay, so I could get up to 12 gig of RAM
It's early.
at the lowest. That's the lowest
point
cost.
where too much RAM is useless.
Well, that's what the point of that one article is. What a good segue. Okay. Okay. You know what? Let me say one other thing while I'm on this blank page that I just made right here. Right there. Okay. Remember back when we talked to the width of the bus? Okay, and we had 2 bus widths. We had 32-bit and we had 64-bit buses. Okay. Now, all your motherboards probably will go either way. Okay, old ones only went to here. New ones will do both or either. No, I shouldn't say both. Okay, and which one yours uses depends on the operating system you have installed. All the machines in the school have XP 32-bit.
When I installed Ubuntu with Aspen,
And you can install either 32 or 64.
it says 32 is recommended.
Okay, and there's a reason for that, because 32's been around forever, and your programs may or may not work if you do 64. But here's the deal with the difference. 32-bit will only see 4 gigabits of RAM. If I put 32 gig in there, it's only going to see 4. 64-bit is unlimited. Okay? So if I put 12 gig of RAM in that machine over there, it will be no different than right now with 4, because it's running XP 32-bit. But if I put Windows 7, that's supposed to be a 7, we'll pretend that.
I would be better off putting
Make it a Z. If I put Windows 7 64-bit on there, it will see all 12 gig of RAM. Now, I have Windows 7 64-bit on my computer at home, and I've got 8 gig of RAM there. And it's got the exact same processor as this one. You want to know how much faster my machine runs?
A lot.
None. I see absolutely no difference. Okay? Why? Because most of the stuff I'm doing doesn't use more than 4 gig of RAM.
You need to play Skyrim on that or something.
I do. My son has a slower processor, and he's got 4 gig of RAM, and he's got Windows 7 32-bit, and it doesn't run any different at all. In fact, his video card makes his run way faster. Okay, so there's a point where RAM is in it. Does it make a difference? Okay, people go and buy PCs and put as much RAM as they can in them, and I would say should be your target right there, because like on this machine. I don't know if it's still open. No, it's not. There's 4 gig of RAM in there. How much does it see? I didn't even see the whole 4. Because there's a point where some of it can't see anyway. So even 4 could be considered overkill. You probably could get away with 3 and it always would see 3. But there's a certain area of the RAM that it can't see. So I shoot for 4. Most of the servers have 4 and no more than that. Some of them have more. I've got one server that's got 16, and that one's going to have 32, but that's because it's going to run a bunch of servers at one time. Okay? So, and back here on this article, we're going to look at that in a second. That says, how much RAM do I need? When you look at that, you'll see a lot of them. Like, where am I at? There we go. A lot of them say this. Okay, because I can't see it anyway. This is the new trend, because you can put more and more RAM in it, but some of the software doesn't work anymore. If I try to hook up my iPod and do stuff on my iPod or the tablets that we have, it immediately says won't work with 64-bit, and I have to go to a 32-bit machine to get it to work. Okay? Now, I'm not saying you should necessarily get a 32-bit machine. It's just if you have 32-bit, then don't waste your money on more than 4 gig of RAM. Unless you're planning on, and by the way, you have to wipe it out to do this. It's not, you can't do an upgrade from here to here. You have to wipe everything, start all over, and switch to 64-bit. That answer your question? Okay, so I got this cool scanner that I can use that lets me not open my box and tells me all kinds of stuff about it without ever even opening it up, like how many slots. It normally comes down here and says, hey, here's where you can buy memory, and here's how much the memory costs. It is a really nice tool to be able to do that. And it's not just for memory. Like I'll have somebody say, hey, I want to buy a new video card. What kind of video card do I need? Well, you're not going to talk somebody through opening up the box. If you do, you're silly. Because you're just saying, hey, I'm going to talk you through ruining your PC. Because if they called you and asked you that question, they don't know how to open up their computer and check. If they did, they wouldn't have asked you. So you don't want them inside their PC. But they can certainly go to this website and then just say, hey, tell me what the motherboard model is. And then you pull it up and you slide down here, and I know what kind of expansion slots I have. So what kind of video card do I want? That's really loud. Okay. If I was buying one, what kind would I buy?
A good one.
What kind would I buy?
Gamer.
For what kind of slot?
A PCI. X16.
X16, okay, and I've got 2 of those slots here. Okay, so I want to buy one for the best slot I've got. I've got 2 PCI, 2 PCI X1, not for video cards, and 2 PCI X16s. PCIs are not as good as the PCI X16, so I know what kind. But if they do that, and they do that scan like this motherboard that I just made a server out of, this is what Moodle is running on now. Okay, this Asus motherboard. Okay, really nice motherboard.
It's
Asus, sorry, because it's for Pegasus. Okay, so it's a really nice motherboard, but you wouldn't want it if you were going to play Skyrim. Why? Because when I look at the expansion slots on here, there is 2 PCI X1s, 1 PCI, and it's got 1 PCI X16 slot on it. It's really kind of a small motherboard. But it does great as a server. It's running just fine. Okay? But I'm not trying to be a gamer on that one. This one, however, would be a decent gamer. Not a gamer video card. So, okay. So that's where we're at. And that's really it on the memory stuff. I don't think I have another slide. Oh, okay. Oh, let me finish. So when we got there, I was going to go actually show you where to buy some. So you need to make sure you know first the speed and the type that you want. And then you're going to look at the different costs of sizes that you're going to go put in there. Okay? Usually the ads list this stuff. They may or may not list the latency. Okay? So sometimes that's hard to find. Sometimes you have to go to the manufacturer's website to find that. Make sure you're matching that to the motherboard speed, whatever it says the maximum. That's why you want to do like we did here. On one. That's why you want to do like we did here and say, okay, I know this goes up to 800, 1066 if it's an AM2 plus or AM3. Honestly, I don't remember which kind this processor is. I think it's an AM3, so I think I could put 1066. But I'm not going to swear by it. Okay? So I want to match it and make sure it matches up with my motherboard. We already know how to put in the memory because we did that the other day. We were pulling and putting in memory. I'm not going to go over that again. The one thing, you guys, when we put in memory, the PC should be laying flat so the motherboard's down.